The Lighthouse Keeper's Ledger. In 2024, a demolition crew clearing a condemned lighthouse keeper's cottage on the Oregon coast found a bricked-up cellar that shouldn't have existed on any blueprint. Inside was a ledger written in 3 different handwritings, a child's shoe nailed to the wall, and a name that had been crossed out of the county's records for 60 years. What began as a routine teardown became the unraveling of a family that had been quietly disposing of people who didn't fit since the 1950s, and the discovery of a woman who had been presumed dead for over a decade, alive and still counting the bricks. Cormorant Point, Oregon, April 2nd, 2024. The cottage had been condemned for 11 years. Salt air had eaten through the shingles, and the county finally approved the teardown to make way for a new public overlook. Foreman Danny Ruiz had done 100 jobs like this. Old coastal properties, half collapsed, full of raccoons and rot. Nothing about this one felt different until his crew pulled the plaster off the north wall of the cellar and found brick behind it. Fresh brick or fresher than the rest? Mortared in a different decade than everything around it. "Boss," his crew member Tanya called. "This wall's not original." Danny ran his hand along the seam. It was a patch job, but a careful one. Someone had matched the brick color, staggered the courses. Someone who didn't want it found by accident. "Open it," he said. It took 40 minutes with a sledge and a demo saw. When the last brick came loose, the smell hit first, dry mineral old. Behind it was a room no bigger than a closet, maybe 4 feet by 6. A single shelf ran along one wall, empty except for a leather ledger swollen with damp. Nailed above the shelf, at what would have been a child's eye level, was a small canvas shoe, laces still tied. The crew called it in immediately. By that evening, the county sheriff's department had the cottage roped off, and Detective Renata Cole was standing in the cellar with a flashlight, staring at the shoe. "This wasn't storage," she said quietly. "This was built to keep something." The keeper's family. The cottage had belonged to the Aldrich family for 3 generations. Otto Aldrich had kept the light from 1948 until it was automated in 1971, after which the family stayed on as caretakers of the grounds. Otto died in 1979. His son, Warren, inherited the house and lived there until his own death in 2013, after which it sat empty, tied up in an estate dispute between Warren's 2 surviving children, June and Peter Aldrich. Cole pulled the original property records and found something strange. A 1957 county inspection report noted for occupants at the cottage. Census record from the same year listed only 3. Otto, his wife Dorothy, and Warren, age 9. The 4th person was never named again in any document Cole could find. "Somebody lived in this house who wasn't supposed to exist on paper," she told her partner, Desmond Ferris. "That's not a clerical error. That's a pattern." The ledger. Once dried and stabilized by the State Archive Lab, the ledger turned out to be a working log. Dates, weather notes, supply lists, the ordinary business of running a lighthouse station. But scattered through the mundane entries, in a different hand, were lines that didn't belong. June 4th, 1957. The girl is quiet today. Dee says it's for the best. I'm not so sure. October 11th, 1957. She asked for her mother again. I told her the story about the tide taking bad memories out to sea. She believed it. I hate that she believed it. January 2nd, 1958. Dee says we cannot keep 2. One was hard enough. I don't know what that means, and I am afraid to ask. The initial D appeared throughout. Cole cross-referenced it against the family and landed on Dorothy Aldrich, Otto's wife, who had died in 1988. The other handwriting, the one asking questions instead of giving orders, remained unidentified, but it read like someone young, someone caught between obedience and conscience. A second search. With the ledger as probable cause, Cole secured a warrant to search the rest of the property, including the old fog signal shed 40 yards from the main house. Ground-penetrating radar picked up 2 anomalies beneath the shed's concrete floor. The excavation took 3 days. The first was a small wooden crate containing the partial remains of a child, estimated age 4 to 6 at time of death. The second, deeper and older, held adult remains with a fractured hyoid bone. Evidence, the medical examiner noted, consistent with strangulation. Dental records for the child matched nothing in Oregon's missing persons files. But a decades-old flyer, digitized by a local historical society, surfaced within days. A photo of a girl named Ruth Ann Voss, reported missing from a church picnic in a neighboring county in 1957, age 5. Case closed in 1959 as presumed drowned. She didn't drown, Coles said, looking at the flyer next to the crate. She was brought here, the name that was crossed out. Going deeper into county birth and baptismal records, Coles' team found a 1953 entry for a boy named Samuel Aldrich, Otto and Dorothy's second son, with a line struck through it in different ink and the word deceased added in the margin, undated and signed. No death certificate existed, no burial record, no obituary. Warren Aldrich, interviewed decades earlier during an unrelated 1994 property dispute, had once told a neighbor he'd had a brother who went away when he was small. The neighbor, now in her 80s, remembered the comment clearly when Cole visited her. I asked him where, she said. He looked at me like I'd asked something indecent, and he never brought it up again. Warren's letters. Warren Aldrich had died in 2013, but his daughter, June, had kept a box of his personal papers in storage. Unopened, she said, because she'd never had the heart. Cole asked to see them. Among receipts and tax documents was a stack of letters Warren had written but never sent, addressed to no one, dated across 4 decades. You asked me once why I never went back to the cellar after Dad died. I couldn't tell you then. I'll tell you now that I only know some children came to that house and never left it, and I was too young and then too much a coward to do anything but keep the ledger going. I thought if I wrote it all down, someone would find it eventually and finish what I couldn't. Another letter, dated 2009, for years before his death, was more direct. Sam didn't die of fever like Mother said. I heard what happened through the floorboards. I was 7. I have spent every year since trying to decide whether silence is a kind of murder too. I believe now that it is. The living witness. The name Cole kept returning to was the one she couldn't place. The second handwriting in the ledger. Too old to be Warren's childish print, too uncertain to be Dorothy's cold instructions. A forensic document examiner compared it against a sample of Otto Aldrich's known handwriting from Lighthouse service logs. It matched a man, not a child, but not Otto. A cross-check of 1950s employment records turned up a hired hand named Elias Corbin, who had assisted with grounds maintenance from 1955 to 1958, then vanished from local records entirely. No death certificate. No further employment history anywhere in the state. Cole found him 9 months later, alive, in his 90s, in an assisted living facility 3 states away, registered under the name Elias Corbin Whitfield. Elias speaks. He was 94 and lucid, though his hands trembled constantly. When Cole showed him a photograph of the ledger page, he was quiet for a long time. I wondered when someone would finally open that wall, he said. He told her that Dorothy Aldrich had run the household with a belief, inherited from her own mother, that certain children, sick, slow, or simply unwanted by relatives who couldn't keep them, could be corrected through isolation and discipline. Otto, he said, mostly looked away. Elias had been paid, quietly, to help manage the children who came and went, some placed informally by relatives who never filed paperwork, some taken in exchange for money from families desperate to be rid of a burden. Ruth Ann didn't wander off from any picnic, he said. Dorothy's cousin brought her, paid Dorothy to keep her quiet, told everyone she'd run off. His voice cracked. Sam was Dorothy's own boy, and even he wasn't spared her temper. I couldn't stop what happened to him. I've lived with that longer than I lived without it. He left in 1958, he said, after Dorothy accused him of getting too close to the children, of softening them. He changed his name out of fear and never returned to Oregon. Is there anyone still alive? Cole asked. Who came through that house and made it out? Elias hesitated. There was one, a girl Dorothy called Nell, younger than Ruth Ann. I heard Dorothy tell Otto she'd sent her back to family in California in the summer of '58. I never saw proof of it. The search for Nell, There's no last name, no birth record, nothing but a nickname and a year. Cole's team spent weeks combing California adoption and foster placement record from 1958, cross-referencing against any child surrendered or placed without clear origin documents. It was Ferris who found the thread. A girl named Eleanor Nell Prosser, placed with a family in Bakersfield in August 1958 by a private arrangement, no state agency involved, no biological family listed. Eleanor Prosser was 71 years old and alive, living outside Sacramento. When Cole called her, there was a long silence on the line before Eleanor spoke. "I used to dream about a cellar," she said. Cold, a woman's voice. "I never had a name to put to it. I thought I made it up." She agreed to meet, face to face. Cole drove down with a photograph of the ledger's cramped, careful second handwriting, Elias's hand, and one more thing, a photocopy of the page describing a girl who asked for her mother and was told a story about the tide. Eleanor read it twice. Her hands were steady, but her eyes weren't. "That's the story," she whispered, "about the water taking bad memories away. I remembered that my whole life and never knew where it came from." She had no memory of Dorothy Aldrich, no memory of the cottage by name, only fragments. A cold room, a shoe she wasn't allowed to wear because the sound of it on the stairs gave Mrs. away. Cole didn't need to ask which shoe had been nailed above the shelf. She already knew. Someone kept it, Eleanor said when Cole finally told her. "All this time, someone kept my shoe." Warren's confession, 20 years too late. Cole believed, based on everything in the letters and the ledger, that Warren Aldrich had spent his whole adult life trying to atone quietly for a childhood he hadn't chosen and couldn't undo, writing letters he never sent, keeping a ledger no one asked him to keep, hoping someone would eventually tear down a wall he didn't have the courage to open himself. It didn't excuse the silence. Cole was clear about that in her report. A grown man had 35 years as an adult to say something, and he never did. But it explained the ledger's strange, aching honesty, a document that read less like evidence and more like a confession addressed to whoever came looking. Charges and closure. With Dorothy, Otto, and Elias's direct involvement in the deaths of Ruth Ann Voss and Samuel Aldrich established through remains, letters, and testimony, but with both Aldrich's and Warren long deceased, prosecutors were left with a narrow path. Elias Corbin Whitfield was charged with obstruction and failure to report death, both reduced given his age, his decades of self-imposed exile, and his full cooperation. He was sentenced to probation. He died 14 months later. There was no one left to convict for what had happened to Ruth Ann or to Sam. The county formally closed both cases as homicides in 2025, correcting the record after nearly 70 years. Ruth Ann Voss's name was added to a memorial the Historical Society placed at the overlook where the cottage once stood. Samuel Aldrich, the boy who was erased from his own family's records, finally received a death certificate. What Nell kept. Eleanor Prosser asked for one thing when the case closed, the shoe. The county released it to her the following spring. She keeps it now on a shelf in her home outside Sacramento, next to a photograph of a lighthouse she has never visited and, for most of her life, could not have named. "I don't need to go back there," she told Cole the last time they spoke. "I carried it with me either way. I'd just rather know what I was carrying." The overlook at Cormorant Point opened to the public in the fall of 2025. There's a small plaque near the railing, easy to miss unless you're looking for it, listing 2 names and 2 dates 67 years apart, the year they were lost and the year they were finally found.